All right, it's 11 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. Officially, we have 120 people that registered for this event and appreciate you all taking time out of your Friday afternoon to join us. We're excited to kick off this three-part series with the Career Design Center and hopefully, learn a lot of things that will help us develop as staff here at Utah State. And so with us today, we have Dannon Loveland and Rachel Hollingsworth. Dannon has been working at Utah State since December of 2010 and has been at the Career Design Center since January of 2016. Dannon has taught and advised thousands of students about career development related topics in one-on-one and group settings. Along with being a career design specialist, he is also the instructor of the Integrated Studies capstone course, Career Design and Planning. He's interested in the future of work, the way discovery, learning, and contribution interplay, and the value of networking. He grew up in Brigham City and currently lives in Logan with his wife and 6 kids, and enjoys traveling, reading, listening to music, and collecting quotes. Rachel Hollingsworth started working at the Career Design Center in January of this year. And as a career design specialist, she works with the College of Education and Human Services and is the instructor for the USU 3400 course, Launch Your Career. She's currently in her master's program for professional school counseling and will graduate this December. Rachel grew up here in Cache Valley and currently lives in Nibley with her husband and her dog, Coco. She also loves to travel, paddleboard, and spend time with her family and friends. So on that note, I will turn the time over to Dannon and Rachel. I will mute myself, but keep an eye on the chat and kind of let them lead the discussion. And then we'll have some Q&A time at the end. In case you didn't hear, hadn't logged on yet, a couple minutes ago, Dannon invited everybody to, but did not request or want to pressure anyone into turning their cameras on as well, just so we can see each other and be present. But if you have that ability, we always like to see your smiling faces. So with that, Dannon and Rachel, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So we're really excited to share this with everyone today. We hope that this is helpful. And so please feel free to ask questions, participate as much as you'd like. This really is supposed to be helpful for you in your current state, wherever you are in your professional capacity. We'd love to just help you with any resume or cover letter questions or tips that you may have. So just starting out with the Career Design Center, if you're not very familiar with our office, or if you are, but you're not really aware of a lot of our services, we'd love to just give a recap of some of our services that we offer for you and our students. So we have a Career Champions program that is a great way for you if you'd like to be more involved with our office and get a monthly newsletter with what's going on, ways that you can be involved. That would be a great way for you to get involved with our office. Feel free to sign up for that newsletter every month. For students and also for alumni, we have resume drop-in hours. You're welcome to come in and use that yourself, or if students are wanting their resume reviewed, they're welcome to come in and use that as well. We also offer online Canvas courses for students, whether they are wanting to explore different majors or careers, participate in experiential learning, or focus on launching into their career. We have these courses to help them prepare and get there through these courses. So they're really, really a great resource. They're all 7 weeks and 1 credit online. We also help students with career exploration through Aggie Handshake. We offer, that's where all the on and off campus employment is listed, as well as some internships that are available on campus. We also help students with internships and job shadowing. We have career fairs throughout the year. All of these are great resources and tools for your students, and so we'd love for them to take part and use them as much as possible. For you, if you ever are wanting us to come and present to a small group, an organization, or if you teach a course or anything, we'd love to present as well. So those are just an overview of some of the things that we offer in our office. A part of our office, we're hosting a series of professional development trainings in the next couple months. So the next part 2 will be about job postings demystified with Alexander Troutner and Jillian Morley, and that'll be in September. So just mark that on your calendar to be aware of what's going on. And then in October will be another training on networking and higher education with Joseph Banks and Marissa Armistead. So feel free to keep an eye out for those. We'd love to have you attend those as well. So getting more into the nitty-gritty of our presentation on resumes and cover letters for professionals, we wanted to just go over the purpose of a resume. There are many reasons why you'd want to keep an updated resume, but the most important reason is if you're wanting to look for different positions, the resume can really help you land that interview and help the employer really recognize what skills you offer to that position into their office and can help justify their hiring decision. We always encourage students and professionals to keep a master copy resume that has a list of a bunch of experiences that you've been involved in, all your work history and everything, so that it makes it easier to tailor when you are applying for different positions, or if you're applying to be on different committees. This resume can really help. Having a master copy resume can really help you tailor a resume for different positions and things you want to be involved in. Key parts of a resume, this could be a refresher for a lot of you, but we want to make sure that every resume has these important key sections. So the first is the heading, specifically with your name, professional email, and phone number. We also encourage, if you are active on LinkedIn, to put your LinkedIn URL on your heading as well. This is another great way for employers or other professionals to connect with you and see who you're connected with, and use that as a networking tool to help them justify you in the hiring decision or your participation on a committee or whatever it may be. This is a little outdated. When people include their address on their heading or on their resume, you typically don't need to include your resume or your address on your resume. If you are applying for anything out of state, you could include the city and state that you are currently living in, and that could kind of help, and that's appropriate. But besides that, you wouldn't want to include your full address on your resume. The education section is also very important to include on your resume. Anything included in your college years, whether it's your undergrad, graduate school, whatever it may be, that should be included on your resume. Work experience should take up a large chunk of your resume as well, and using success statements to really describe what skills you have gained and the experiences that you've gained in every position can really help the employer or committee or whoever it may be see how you would be a good fit in their with their organization. And we'll go over success statements in a little bit of how success statements work, how you can write up a success statement, and the importance behind that as well. I apologize, I'm so sorry. Some additional sections that we may not always think about, but are really important and vital to a resume, would be any experience that you've had on a leadership, helping with leadership, helping with committees, your participation with ETE and your certifications, any presentations that you've been a part of, internships, research, teaching experience, awards that you've received. So like all of those additional sections can play a vital part in your resume and showcase that you've been involved in a variety of different experiences, a variety of different ways in your professional life, and can really showcase a little bit more about who you are and what you're involved in. So those sections are great to include. And then a skills section. This typically is at the bottom of your resume, and this just highlights key skills, whether it's technical, soft skills, hard skills, whatever it may be, that really highlight where your professional skills have really strengthened over time and what you feel really confident in your work capacity. Some resume reminders. So if you haven't built a resume for a while, or maybe it's time to refresh your current resume, it's important to make sure that your resume is targeted to whatever you're applying for and scannable. So with it being targeted, like I mentioned before, it's great to have a master copy of your resume that just has everything that you've participated in, and then really making a tailored resume to whatever you're applying for to make it more specific to that specific position, the committee, or whatever you're applying for, to make it as specific to that position as possible. With formatting, a couple of tips. We see a lot of different ways of people that come in with their formatting that's a little different, but we'd like to make sure that the margins are 0.5 to 1 inch around. Keep that consistent, as well as your font size, 11 to 12 point font. Making sure that your resume is also tailored to whatever you're applying for, whether it is more professional opportunities with your education that might need more of a CV or portfolio, or other opportunities that might need a more federal resume. And if you have questions about what type of resume would be appropriate, you're always welcome to come and contact us and meet with us, and we're happy to kind of go through the differences and what would be the best for your situation. Also, just
Hey,
remind.
Rachel,
Oh, yes.
we have a question that I think is relevant to what you're talking about right now. And that is, does the order matter? And that is in regards to the previous slide about
Yes.
like education experience. And I actually kind of wrote that down to bring up a little bit later potentially. But I've been told, or I've heard that, maybe when you're with students, when you're coming out of college, you want to highlight that education potentially if you don't have a lot of experience. But us as professional staff may have more experience, and so you really want to highlight that early on, and that education can kind of move lower. Is that what you would recommend, or how would you recommend, kind of the order of things?
I think either way is fine, as long as you include your education and your work experience. I think that's why it's important to really tailor your resume to whatever you're applying for. If it is another position that is a little bit more advanced, or you're kind of pivoting in your career, it could be important to highlight more of the work experience before your education, to highlight that you do have a variety and also a lot of years under your belt with that specific experience. So I think really just depends. I think as long as you're including both on your resume, then you can kind of be the judge of how you want to organize that. So that's helpful.
Yeah, the answer to a lot of questions when it comes to should I do this or should I do that, really, like when it comes to resumes and cover letters and is relevancy, right? Like, is it relevant to the employer or the purpose that you're using it for? So where our office mostly works with, current students and recent grads, like we almost always tell them to put their education on the top, and that makes sense. But yeah, there's opportunities where, okay, my experience is going to be more relevant than my education. As you get further down in your role, yeah, your education, like your degree may have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. So to have it on the top maybe wouldn't make sense when you have very relevant experience above that. So yeah.
Rachel, I have a question too. I read recently that there are also 2 ways to organize your resumes, is chronologically and skill-based. So please correct me if this is wrong, and I'm just starting in this role. So chronological resumes are really good if you are applying for a position in the industry where you've worked and you had experience, and but the skill-based are more for a position in a completely different industry that you've never worked before. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. The differences between the chronological is focused on primarily your work history in that reverse chronological order. So the most recent experience you've had, kind of going down to the older experiences. And that is primarily for individuals that have a variety of experience that is related to what they're applying for. This is also the most common type of resume as well. So this is typically what we encourage individuals to use for their resume. But with a skills base, it is helpful. If you don't have, like what you're saying, if you don't have a lot of experience with that specific line of work, then a skills base can showcase different skills that you've developed in different areas of work or volunteer or leadership, whatever it may be, that are related to the position, even if your work history doesn't exactly align with that.
Thank you so much.
No, that's great. Great questions.
There are definitely use cases when you use like a skills-based format But we have heard from some employers, oh, we prefer chronological for quite a few of them, just because that's how they like to do it. But the nice thing about a skills-based resume, sometimes these are also called functional resumes. So if you look it up, like, okay, a functional, what's a skills-based resume, functional resume, you can look it up and kind of get a little more information about that. But sometimes the benefit of that is that you're not going to be reduced simply by the titles and the organizations you've worked for. Instead, you're going to be looked at based on your skills or the functional areas in which you've worked. So, yeah.
To continue, and awesome. I love all the questions, so keep asking them as we go throughout. It's so helpful. Typically, we recommend around 1 to 2 pages, depending on your experience for a resume. If it is a CV or something different, we would encourage you to have a longer resume, but that's typically what we would encourage. And then avoiding any templates as much as possible. They make formatting a little bit tricky, so just start with a blank Word document and start formatting from there is usually the best rule of thumb.
One thing before we jump into cover letters that I would kind of bring up with your resume is, especially for the sake of like professional development and the people that are here, is I would, and Rachel kind of talked about it, but like I would probably make a plan to keep my resume up to date. Whether I'm looking for a job or whether I'm not, it's just a good thing. And so I would probably, and I do, I've set on my calendar every 6 months to update my resume and my LinkedIn profile with things that have happened. It's going to be a lot easier to do that than if, 4 years from now you decide, okay, I need my resume for something. What did I do in the last 4 years? Just to have like that reoccurring, it's pretty easy, in Outlook, just to have a reoccurring calendar item where I review my resume. You might even consider doing that with your performance appraisals. Your performance reviews. Like, okay, I'm getting ready for my performance review. I'm going to update my resume so that I can talk about what I've accomplished in the last year, 6 months. So that can be just a really helpful thing to do. So yeah. Now jumping into our cover letters. Like I get a question a lot. Oh, do I really need a cover letter? Oh, is this really an important thing for me to have to include? And the answer is yes. There's some data from a lot of hiring managers that say a cover letter can make a difference on whether or not you're hired, especially for applicants who their resume maybe doesn't fit perfectly the job that they're applying for. That resume really can make that difference. A cover letter really can make that difference in the application. So one thing that you need to consider as you think about your cover letter is, what does a cover letter provide that a resume does not provide, right? Every once in a while, I'll review a cover letter and it's like a rehash of what they have on the resume. And you don't want that to happen. They already got your resume. You're going to use your cover letter to show a different side of you, not necessarily just the long form, the more difficult to scan form of your experience in education or skills. And so really, it's an opportunity to add that context to your skills and your experience. One thing that you can do in a cover letter that's a lot more difficult to include in a resume is really kind of showing your enthusiasm. Showing your personality a little bit, showing that you're a good fit with the organization that you're applying for, the position that you're applying for. Also is an opportunity to kind of show some of those goals, like the direction that you're headed. Sometimes you look at a resume and you might not be able to say like, okay, this is where they're going, and that can be important. If any of you have been on hiring committees, like, okay, you're joining our organization, our department. Where are we going from here, right? Like, what's the plan? And so it's good to kind of see those goals and that trajectory, and the cover letter can be a good place for it. And really, like, a cover letter is a big part of a cover letter is to show, to build or to show like you have a connection. Those are things that are going to make you, those are things that are going to stand out, make you stand out is that you have a connection with them. And so it's going to be important that that's what that document's about. It's not going to be a general document. It's going to be very specific to the position and an organization that you're applying to. And so, yeah, you want to show like why you're interested in that company, why you're interested in that, department in that organization is really a big part of that cover letter. Go to the next one. So here's a little format that kind of goes over the key parts of a cover letter. So with the cover letter, for the header, you're going to use the exact same header that you have for your resume. Use the same font, use a similar style, so that they look like they go together. That's just a way of making it look very professional. I know sometimes we have questions, especially if it's been a while. Okay, when I went in my high school business class, they taught me that I needed to write a professional letter, and I have the address of the person who's going to receive this and all that. Like a lot of that doesn't need to be included. Really, maybe a date, and that's about it. As far as what needs to be part of that header, you're not sending things through the mail, and it just doesn't really make a ton of sense to have to include that. With the greeting, avoid like "to whom it may concern" or dear committee who's applying, or whatever. Like you want to avoid that. So find out, if you can, who the hiring manager is, and address it directly to the hiring manager. If you don't know or can't find out who the hiring manager is, you might consider calling the office and asking them. But also, you can also just include like the name of the title. So in this example here that you see, it is the title. This is the position I'm applying for. That first paragraph, we like to use kind of a 3-paragraph format. Now, there's not a lot of hard, fast rules, but this is kind of just a good way of getting started with writing that cover letter. But that first paragraph should really state why you're interested and a good fit for the position and for the organization. Again, like one thing that a cover letter can do that a resume can't is list a referral or a contact that you have within the organization. That can make a big difference, because when a hiring manager reads that, oh, I talked to so-and-so that works in this department, what they're going to do is they'll probably go to that person and say, hey, Jana just applied for this position. What can you tell me about him? And they can go ahead and say, oh yeah, you should hire them. Like having that, it's one of those ways that you can really build that connection. The second paragraph, you may identify your 2 or 3 strongest qualifications that are related to the job. Just like your resume, you want your cover letter to be tailored to the job and the organization that you're applying to. So you might identify your 2 or 3 strongest or most unique qualifications that make you kind of stand out, make an impact. Use specific examples. You don't want to talk in generalities too much. You don't want your cover letter to be like, oh yeah, I'm a hard worker. Oh yeah, I'm a, I can solve problems and just list a whole bunch of things. You want to show specific examples in what those are. And in just a few minutes, we'll talk about some of the success statements and writing good success statements. And so those are really valuable and important in a way that you can make an impact. And then the third paragraph is going to be, thank the employer and discuss how and when you'll follow up. I know sometimes people might look to, like set up an interview, or they may use that kind of last paragraph really to keep the communication open, right? Show that you're an approachable person, that you're enthusiastic, restate kind of your interest in the position and the job, and then you sign it with your name. So those are the basic key parts of that cover letter. And before we jump into success statements, was there any questions about cover letters, or any comments or thoughts about cover letters?
Hey, Dan, and Spence Kohler here. One question for you.
Yeah.
I've seen some cover letters where first or second, or probably the second, maybe even the third paragraph, but usually in the second, some folks will put like bullet points, like here's some of my quick qualifications, boom, boom, boom. And they usually add those specific things that were in the required section of the job description. What's your thoughts and opinions on that?
Yeah, I think bullet points can be a way, visually kind of pulling out a few things that you want to make sure that they see. I've seen a lot of I've seen cover letters where they've done a good job at kind of using bullet points. Yeah, and definitely address both your resume and your cover, address things that are in the job description, address things that are the qualifications or are part of the job. So yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah, bullet points can be used.
So we mentioned this a couple times, but your success statements in your resume can really be a key way to showcase how you have developed certain skills, gained experience in your work history, or whether it's your involvement, whatever it may be. But just writing success statements, we typically use a formula that highlights what you did, how you did something, and then why it matters. This really does just encompass the main parts of what you're doing in your job setting, what skills you're using, and then the purpose behind it to show the employer how you would be able to fit into their certain position if you'd be a good fit. It's important to use strong action verbs at the beginning to just highlight those skills again from right off the bat when you're writing your success statements. Highlighting any tools or processes that you're using in your within your work history can really add more detail and really showcase what type of background you do have. And then numbers as well. So just being as descriptive and detailed as possible with these success statements can really help you stand out. And then avoiding words like I, me, and my is also really important with your success statements. A couple of examples of just how to frame a success statement. Again, these aren't sentences. These are just statements that you're going to include underneath all of your work experience, volunteer experience, whatever it may be. And then using that formula, here's an example. So you could just write you helped students. That just showcases the first part, what you did. But adding a little bit more detail with how you did something. So by saying helped 25 students learn their math facts using flashcards, and then adding that last part, why it matters. So it just adds a little bit more detail by saying helped 25 students learn their math facts using flashcards to ensure every student was engaged in the target content. It makes it a little bit more clear, a little bit more detailed, and then you encompass what you did, what you used in your position, and how you could really show the employer what skills would be valuable to their company, that organization, whatever it may be. Another example of using a success statement, this example just says, so the first part, a beginner bullet point would say, you created hands-on learning centers. To add a little bit more detail with the how you did it part, by reinforcing science concepts, including photosynthesis. And then if you added a little bit more detail with why it matters, to help students understand the lesson material. This really does add as much detail, description that's needed for the employer when they're scanning through your resume to see what skills that you can offer into their workplace.
All right, so I was looking in the comments and Marta had a really good comment here, if you want to read it. She says, I'm a program coordinator with the Remote Online Initiative. This comes up with my students often. Think about transferable skills or skills you may already have that qualify you for the position you want. My students are trying to get into entry-level sales roles and often have no sales experience. I encourage them to highlight communication skills, work ethic, project management, and organization skills, etc. And I totally agree. And so when I saw that comment, I'm like, oh yeah, we have a slide about this, and I was planning on talking about it. So I think that's really an important thing. When it comes to like sharing your skills and sharing what you can do, it's useful to talk about those transferable skills. And what you can bring to the table, but it's also really useful to talk about those transferable skills within context of how you've used them, right? Using specific examples. So just like Rachel was saying with the success statements, we want to make sure we don't have like a section on a resume that just lists these things out, right? That just doesn't have communication, problem solving, leadership, creativity. Like that's good, and those are good skills to have. But as far as the value of just seeing that word on your resume, it may not be quite what you want it to be, right? And so being able to know how you can take those, those skills and qualities that the employer wants, both because they're general and all employers want it, also because they're specific and they're listed on those job descriptions. You want to like think about, okay, I have communication skills. How have I shown that? And so you might think about, okay, in my past experience, what things have I done that have highlighted and shown my communication skills, and then create a success statement that highlights that in a specific way. What tools did I use that have shown my communication skills? What what kind of outcomes, accomplishments related to that was I able to get? What was the scope and the scale of the work that I completed or accomplished? And so really think about it in those terms. The other thing is, I think another reason why it's nice to really consider what skills are valued by all employers is because to understand that you're never really like stuck in a job, right? When you think about, this job would be fun, but I don't have any experience in that field, you can think about it, okay, based on the skills and experience I know employers want, what do I have experience with, and what skills can I display and show that way? So it looks like here's another question. Leadership is listed twice, yeah, because it's doubly important. Very important to include leadership on there. So yeah, thank you for noticing that, Jonathan. So Andy asked, do you know if these skills regarding resume construction a universally applicable internationally? Oh, okay. So yeah, internationally, like resumes are going to look a little different in different countries. And so one thing I would say as far as international, resumes are concerned, being able to, if you take the 30,000 view of what a resume is, it's being able to display and show your skills, your experience, your competency. There's certain aspects of that which are going to be universally acceptable, but then there's other aspects of a resume that you will want to do some research, right? If I'm applying for a country in United Arab Emirates or something, I'm going to look, luckily there's a lot of resources online that you can go and say like, okay, how is a resume different in this country than it is where I'm from? And they can give you some examples. So for like an example, here in the US, like we don't put like a picture on a resume, like it's not something that we include. There's a lot of reasons for that, but other countries that's not the case, and they expect you to have maybe a picture or maybe some demographic information, because that's the other thing. Like we might have laws that make it difficult, or a reason that we wouldn't want to include some of that demographic information. So yeah, it really kind of depends on the company, the department, or the country that you do this for. The other thing that is kind of interesting, here in the US, we have what we call a CV, and those are kind of used in a few different industries, including an academic industry, or an academic type of jobs are going to ask for a CV. Other countries, resume and CVs, they don't have a resume, they have CVs, and it's kind of the way that they do is a little differently. Oftentimes with the CV, there's not going to be any page limit. In fact, oftentimes with CVs, like the longer the CV, it might show something about you, right? Obviously you want to still make it relevant to the reasons you're applying for the jobs, but those are some things to really kind of think about. Here's another question: how much value do non-professional skills have? That's a good question. I don't know or listing skills that you only have unprofessional hobby evidence for. Okay, that's a good question. So one thing that as I've talked to students, one thing as they write their resume, I have to talk to them about thinking broadly about their skills and experience, right? Because sometimes in our mind we think like, okay, unless it was a job, either an internship or a job I got paid for and I clocked in and clocked out, like it doesn't need to be on my resume. But I think there are use cases where it's valuable to include some of those things on your resume. And the times when it's most valuable is when you can justify putting those on there, because the skill's relevant, or because like it helps you to build a connection. So that would be the reasons why I would include that, because I do think that there's definitely some values in there. You know, I have examples of students I've worked with that came in and said, oh, I don't have any experience, or I don't have experience in this field that I want to go into. And as we've talked and discussed, we realized that within maybe volunteer experiences or even like personal experience. I had a student come in and she was very interested in being an event planner, and she never had worked as an event planner, but I got talking to her, you know, how'd she get interested in working in event planning? She's able to give some examples like, oh yeah, I helped plan this extended family reunion with my mom, and it was pretty intense, you know, like what we had to do, because we planned all the food and we got every, you know, like, and so as we talked about like that experience that she had, this was not something that was a job per se, right? But it's very relevant. And so if you present that to a potential employer and you say, hey, this is my experience, a lot of employers like don't care where you got the experience if it's relevant to what we are looking for. The skills and experience, you definitely are able to display that you have those skills and those experiences. So great question. Yes, Jonathan, so put it on the cover letter. Yes, you can put on your cover letter. There's also ways that you can put on your resume as well. But yeah, there's certain things that are going to be easier to put on a cover letter than are going to be put on a resume, and so just kind of consider that. But you definitely want to make sure it becomes part of your application and what you present. So. One thing that I would say too, I mean, as far as your resume as a document, your resume as a document that will help, not necessarily just for you to get a job, but also think of it as a document that can help you within your professional development. So you might, you know, I've already mentioned before about, you know, having a regular time to update your resume and your LinkedIn profile. But you might also spend some time looking at jobs that maybe right now you might think like, oh, I don't know if I qualify for this job, you know, so maybe I'm not planning to apply or change jobs or whatever. Look at job descriptions and get to know those job descriptions and think about it in terms of, okay, if I did want this job in the future, what would I need to do? What experiences would I need to have? What skills would I need to have? And then in some ways you can use that, okay, what would I need to have on my resume in order to qualify for this job? And you can kind of work towards that. So your resume really can be kind of a, you know, like you can use it as a planning document of sorts to prepare for the next step of your career. So instead of waiting until like, I need a new job right now, you might think about it in terms of, okay, what's the next thing I need to know and need to do, and experience I need to have and skills I need to have. And so looking for opportunities to develop professionally. And I feel like in some ways I'm preaching to the choir because you're all here today. And so it kind of makes sense that, you know, like this is important to you to learn this stuff. But we have a lot of great resources, you know, like as USU employees, LinkedIn Learning, I love going on there if I have a few minutes and seeing, oh, there's some pretty cool courses on there. I can gain some better Excel skills than I currently have, or I can learn some, you know, some skills in leadership that I maybe feel like I'm lacking, or communication. So you can look at that. You know, attending conferences, you know, can be really helpful. We do some, you know, conferences and events here on campus that are open to everyone, and I think there's a lot of value in attending those. I think one thing that can be really valuable too is just having a conversation with your supervisor as you think about your career development. You know, hopefully that's part of your conversation. You know, like, where do I want to be? What goals do I want to have? You know, even asking your supervisor, you know, are there skills that you can see that would be helpful for me to develop, and find opportunities to go and develop those skills. Along with that as well, you know, there's this idea, you guys can look it up but I do think it's kind of interesting, of like job crafting, right? And so you think about, okay, within what I currently do, is there some flexibility where I can kind of create some opportunities within my current position to either develop more skills or to learn new things that will benefit the organization that the department that I'm working for. One thing, I didn't know exactly how to include this, but if you haven't used ChatGPT before, it's It's pretty cool, and it's changing a lot of different things. And ChatGPT has become like a pretty interesting tool when it comes to career development, and when it comes to crafting resumes and job descriptions. You know, I invite you to kind of go and look up some YouTube videos or some resources online that go over ChatGPT, or reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk to you about it because I think they're really cool. Where you can get a job description, copy it, and paste it into ChatGPT and say, pull out all the important skills as part of this job description, and they will give you, you know, a list of skills and qualities that are really useful. And I think that's kind of neat, you know, like you can use this, you know, use the AI to kind of pull out the things that, of course, you could probably do that yourself and read through the job and, you know, highlight things and circle things, but it's kind of cool to be able to get a different perspective, or, you know, put your cover letter into you know, ChatGPT and say, make this sound more professional, and it can kind of give you some ideas on how you would make your cover letter sound more professional. So it's kind of nice when it comes to your ability to communicate your career, your ability to communicate your skills and experiences, and your ability to connect what you've done with where you want to be. AI and ChatGPT like can really be a useful resource with that. So again, also, you know, as far as professional development is concerned, part 2 and part 3 of this series course, we invite you to attend those and be part of that. You know, meet the other members of the career design team here at Utah State, and learn a few things along the way. So with that, we kind of open up for questions or conversations or arguments, I guess. Sometimes I go and teach in a class, I'm like, well, my dad says you shouldn't do this or you should do this. So I'm happy to kind of open it up for whatever thoughts. This is a subject matter that Rachel and I are really interested in and could probably talk for hours about. So, but we want to like thank you for your time and being here.
Hi, Dannon. Sorry. This is Yana. I just have a question. I'm not really sure whether this is like the right place to ask it, but so an example would be Utah State University. You know, there's a lot of job offers, but a lot of the job offers don't actually post the salary. So what do you guys think about that? Because we have a lot of students that potentially apply for those jobs, but they will ask us about what's the salary, like how do I address that? Do I address that? Do I ask the question? Who do I ask the question? So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
That's a very interesting question. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's certain states now that require salary be posted on job postings. Like Colorado is one of them. I think California requires it now or something. And so I think it's only a matter of time before Utah probably gets on that bandwagon and post salary. That's not the question you're asking, but I do think it's kind of interesting. So I know of some organizations that's part of their screening process too. You know, they might call and ask, you know, what kind of salary are you looking for? It used to be very like much more taboo than it is currently. You know, it used to be like, oh, wait for the employer to bring up salary. You don't bring it up, you know, as the applicant. But it's become less that way. Even to the point where I've read some articles that are kind of directed towards HR professionals that say a lot of like Gen Z kind of younger generation aren't even applying for jobs that salary is not posted on, which I think is very much like, okay, you know, if you want to attract people to apply for a job, you're going to post the salary, or at least a salary range, so someone can know. And so I don't know if that's kind of a roundabout answer to your question, but I think it's a little less taboo than it used to be.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, and in some ways reflects on what I was thinking, what you just said. So yeah, thank you though.
Yeah.
We have a couple of comments in the chat. Someone asked, how important is a LinkedIn profile? Will it hurt me if I don't have a lot of connections or I'm not super active on LinkedIn? I think it is more your personal decision if you want to be active on LinkedIn or not. But I think LinkedIn, there is a great community with USU with LinkedIn and getting connected. So I think it really is, it could be beneficial to be more active on LinkedIn, to participate, to start networking with different professionals and to get connected. it could be beneficial in your current position, but also if you're interested in transitioning or to moving around, it could be helpful. So we recommend it for sure.
Rachel, I'll chime in too, even though I'm not leading this discussion.
Yes,
But,
please do.
And this may fall more into the networking one that we'll have in a couple months. But I found LinkedIn very helpful, especially for connecting with professionals outside of Utah State, because it can be a good way to, find out how other universities, colleges are doing things. You'll find that a lot of people in similar positions are going through similar stuff to you. And it can be a way to just bounce frustrations that you may be having off of, people that are in no way connected to USU. So it can be kind of a safe space to bounce frustrations, vent a little, and then, brainstorm with people that are dealing with similar things. And so I was kind of a slow adopter for LinkedIn because I was like, holy cow, I've got enough social media profiles. I don't need one that has to do with professional stuff now. But once I started getting into it for higher ed specifically, I found it very beneficial just because there's, so many people at so many different institutions that are doing very similar things to what you're doing.
Hey, Tim, can I jump on that and just ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Do you have a paid subscription or do you just have a free subscription?
No, I'm cheap. I just have a free subscription.
And I guess the next question.
I've done a couple trials of the paid one, especially when I maybe have been looking for opportunities and found that beneficial to target that half off subscription or free trial or whatever.
And that's what I've wondered. Is a paid subscription really that much better than what we get for free?
The one thing I would say with that is just like what Tim said, is you can decide for yourself, right? Like, as far as like a free trial, right? Like it's pretty easy. And you can look at, okay, what do I get out of a paid subscription? I'd probably say you probably don't need it as much as, you might think. It depends. I guess if you have, you want to see every single person who has looked at your profile, or if you want to be able to contact, reach out and connect with people who aren't part of your network, then there's some benefits in that way. But I think generally it's not necessary. So you can still find a lot of value out of LinkedIn without paying any money. So one thing I would say too about like LinkedIn and using LinkedIn is simply like, and you'll go over this as you go to the series of this on networking, I assume. But like you build a network before you need a network, right? So sometimes you don't realize and don't understand and know the value of your network until you actually need it, if that makes sense. And so it's good to always kind of, just like you update your resume on a regular basis, it's good to always kind of be connecting and networking with people. So a great question. There's another question. Oh, was there?
Well, I was just gonna say we've got a few more in the chat here. Advice for combating and standing out when we know more and more that AI is being used to filter resumes as a first wave.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. There's a couple thoughts that I have about that. One is networking, right? We just barely talked about it, but networking is a way that you can definitely stand out when it comes to those type of things. The other thing is a lot of applicant tracking systems, which is basically the computer system which gets resumes, collects resumes and cover letters and all of that, do often score your resume before you're actually ever seen by human eyes, right? And so they scan it and they look for keywords that you might have. So that's why it's so important to tailor your resume and to use keywords that you can see within the job description in your own application materials. And so it's a big part. And there's a lot that's been said about this. One thing, even like just making sure that your resume can be read by a computer. I don't know if that really makes sense, but if you've ever had like a PDF of something and you try to copy and paste it into a Word document and it looks all jumbly, chances are you're not going to make it through an applicant tracking system either, right? And so kind of keep that in mind as well with your what you submit, even to the point, like when I first started in career services, it was very much like, okay, what you should submit is a PDF of a your resume and your cover letter. But now more and more of these applicant tracking systems actually prefer it to be in some, like a Word document or something, because then they can actually scan it a little differently than they could if it was a PDF. So yeah, there's a lot that can be said, and I'm sure we'll continue to have that conversation about kind of making it through some of these applicant tracking systems and getting past the robots into human eyes. So there's a few other comments here. All right. So Alyssa asked, would you suggest anything in particular for resumes or cover letters that are being written for jobs within your organization? One thing I would say with that is it can be much more conversational, right? Because they know that you know what the organization is like. And so when it comes to resumes and cover letters, like you're going to want to match the organization that you're, as much as you can, that you're applying to, right? And so that goes with, how do I address these things? And so in a case like that, so here's like an example. If you've been working in a position for a number of years and you have a lot of different experiences within that position, and you're applying for a promotion or you're applying for another organization or another position with the same organization, you might organize your skills and experience in a little different way. Instead of saying, like it's this position at, at this company, like, okay, they know that because you work at that company or whatever, or that organization, you might highlight it in a little bit different way. And likewise with your cover letter, like, hey, these are the experiences that I have within this organization, maybe remind them or bring up some things that they may already know, but just highlight those and how they qualify you for a new job or a promotion. So good question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like what y'all said about like a certificate section, and I'm switching, or I'm open to or I'm trying to switch industries and trying to fill in some gaps that I didn't like study in college. How I have it right now is that I kind of lumped it into my skills section. Would it be better to make a whole separate section for my analytics certificates and HubSpot certificates, or what do y'all think?
I think it's either way is fine. We do see a lot of resumes that have it lumped together, like skills and certifications. If you have a lot of certifications that would be applicable and relevant to the position that you're applying for, then you could make a separate section and just highlight the certifications.
About how many is a lot? Like 3 or more, or 5 or more? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would definitely, I mean, as long as you have, you have enough to write a whole section or keep a whole section for the certifications, you should be good. But that sounds like that would be appropriate.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby.
We've got a question in the chat. Can you explain how to express connections or your network in a cover letter, but kind of avoid saying, I know so-and-so blandly?
Yeah, that's a good question. One way I would do this, like I know so-and-so blandly, because I totally understand that, is maybe before you apply for the job, reach out to someone that you know and have a conversation with them about, if it's appropriate, have a conversation with them about the job or the position. Because then when you bring up that you know someone, right, you're bringing up that you know them in context of the job that you're applying for, right? And so you might say, as I talked to, Carrie, she had mentioned how valuable it was, to have these skills. So it made me excited because I have those skills that you're looking for, whatever it might be. But that's a little less blandly, I guess, if that makes sense. Or you can bring up more than just like, I know so-and-so, but you can bring up like projects you've worked with that person on, or the context in which you know them, or maybe even the value you see in them. So I've seen options with that too, where people have been like, you know, having known so-and-so and hearing them talk about how much they love working at your organization, it makes me excited for the opportunity that I have to possibly work for you as well. You know, does that make sense? I hope that answers your question.
I think it's also a good idea to have that conversation, like what you're saying, Dannon. If the employer or the company reaches out to that person, you'd want them to be a little bit more prepared to talk about you and to really promote you for the position too, because I think it's always beneficial that way to help your cause with that.
Yeah. Great thoughts, great questions. There was a question here. Ryan asked, I heard that having too many keywords in your resume or cover letter can sometimes hurt you in the screening process. Is that true? I've heard that same thing. So sometimes these applicant tracking systems, it's interesting because they'll score you. Oftentimes is how they work. They'll score you based on the keywords that you use. And they'll give you, you know, like a number, for instance, from 0 to 100 or something like that. And so if you have like a grade 100, you might think like, oh yeah, this person must be the perfect person. But most of the time they're flagged because it's an error of they probably just copied and pasted the job description into their resume. And, you know, like you can understand why maybe that would be an issue. So do a good job at matching what they're looking for. But don't just copy and paste, you know, like don't just copy and paste the job description into your resume or cover letter. So, or even large blocks of that. Yeah. So yeah, I've heard that it can hurt you.